as we've got into the Mishnah of Shekalim, we've gone from collecting the half-shekel to storing and distributing it to administrating the financial economy of the temple. And as we enter the third Mishnah of chapter 5, we're going to deal with the administration of the offerings themselves. And in order to understand this Mishnah, we need first of all to go to a verse that describes the offerings. And there are many such verses in Torah. And just for the sake of argument, just as an example, I'm bringing the offerings for Rosh Chodesh, for the new moon, from the Parashat of Pinchas, from the 28th chapter of Numbers. And the Torah writes there, V'rashei chodshechem takrivu ola l'Adonai parim v'nei vakar shenayim v'ayil echad kvasim b'nei shana shiv'a temimim. On new moon, you present a burnt offering, 2 young bullocks and 1 ram, 7 lambs, male lambs of the first year without blemish. So all these kinds of animals. And then there are some additional offerings that go with them. Offerings of flour and oil. 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a meal offering, mixed with oil for each bullock. And 2/10 of fine flour for 1 ram. And 1/10 of fine flour mingled with oil for a meal offering for every lamb. A burnt offering, a sweet savor, an offering made by fire for the Lord. Veniskehem chatzi hahin yelapar, and their drink offerings are 1/2 a hin of wine for each bullock, ushlishit hahin la'ayil, and 1/3 of a hin for each ram, urvit hahin lakeves yain, and a 1/4 of a hin for each lamb. Zot olat chodesh b'chodsho l'chodshei hashana. So there are animals, but there is oil and wine and flour that goes with the animals. And the quantities differ for different kinds of offerings. There are different proportions of a hin of wine and different proportions of an ephah of flour and different quantities of oil. How do we know which is which? When someone brings an offering or wants to bring an offering to the temple, how do they know how much wine or how much oil or how much fine flour to bring with it? And where do they get the oil and the wine and the fine flour of the right quantity and the right purity? Because, of course, these ingredients must be tahor, they can't be tameh. And someone can bring an animal, sure, to be sacrificed, and the animal can't receive tumah, it's a live animal. But being able to bring an animal that can't receive tumah is quite different from being able to bring oil or wine or flour of the necessary purity. So what did they do? Well, they would bring the offering, but then they would buy the additional items, you might say the dessert, the extras. They buy the extras from the temple. And someone in the temple would know how to serve them out, how to dish them up in the right way, the right quantity and the right purity. And that's the subject of our Mishnah, the third Mishnah in chapter 5. Arba'ah chotamot hayu b'mikdash. There were 4 seals in the temple. V'chatuv alehen, egel, zachar, gedi, chote, calf, ram, kid, and sinner. And we can recognize the calf, ram, and the kid. These are the 3 kinds of animals that we read about in the Torah, these three kinds of animals all have different kinds of oil and wine and fine flour to go with them. What's the sinner? What is a sinner? Well, let's go to the Talmud in Arachin for just a minute. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says, or in Arachin 16a, Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says that Rabbi Yochanan says, Al Shiva Dvarim Negain Ba'in. Leprous marks. Leprosy comes for 7 things. And then there's a list of 7 sins for malicious speech, for slander, for bloodshed, for an oath taken in vain, for forbidden sexual relationships, for arrogance, for theft, and for stinginess. Leprosy is supposed, according to the Talmud, leprosy comes as a result of these things. And we read in the Torah that someone who's recovered from leprosy needs to bring an offering. That offering has its own libations. We don't say leprosy in the list of libation types like calf, ram, kid, like calf, ram, or kid. When we say choteh, sinner, we're referring to the offerings for someone who's recovered from leprosy and who's brought his offering to the temple. That's the first opinion in the Mishnah. There were 4 seals. And Ben Azai is going to disagree. Ben Azai Omer, Chamisha Hayu. Ben Azai says there were 5 seals. Moreover, Va'aramit Katsuv Alehem. And they were actually written not in Hebrew, but in Aramaic. So they are written in the kind of the language of the people, because commonly people spoke Aramaic in the time of the temple. So what was written on them? Well, the first 4 are the same. Egel, Zachar, Gdi, Choteh. Calf, ram, kid. But the 4th, choteh, we have choteh dal, a poor sinner, vechoteh ashir, a rich sinner. According to Ben Azai, there were different seals for a poor sinner, a rich sinner, i.e. someone poor who recovered from leprosy, and someone rich, because the Torah actually prescribes 2 kinds of offerings. One kind of offering, which is the ideal one, and another lot smaller offering for someone who can't afford the best. Egel mishamesh im nichsei bakar gdolim uktanim tzachachrim unekavod. Calf serves for the libations of cattle, large and small, male and female. Gdi mishamesh im nichsei tzon gdolim uktanim. Kid serves for libations of sheep or goats, large and small, male and female. Chutz Michel Elim, with the exception of rams. Zachar Mishamesh im Nichsei Elim Bilvad. Ram serves for the libations of rams alone. Choteh Mishamesh im Nichsei Shalosh Behemot Shel Mitzoraim. And a sinner serves for the libations of the 3 animals of the lepers. So we've got these seals, these 4 seals, or these 5 seals, depending which way you look at it. And they all serve for a particular kind of sacrifice. What are we going to do with these? Let's read the next Mishnah, Mishnah 4. Anyone who required libations would go to Yochanan. We've heard about Yochanan in the previous day's Mishnayot. Yochanan was the officer over the seals. Yochanan shehu memune ala chotamot. Yochanan was in charge of the seals. So what would they do? Noten lo ma'ot u'mekabel mimeno chotam. They'd give him money and they'd receive from him a stamped receipt. Yeah, this feels like a department store. You hand over your money and you get a stamped receipt from the person that's in charge of the seal that can stamp that receipt. Balo etzel Achia. Then he goes to Achia. We learned about Achia as well. He's in charge of the libations. He's in charge of distributing all this stuff. And he's an expert on quantities and on purity. Balo etzel Achia, shehu memone ala nasachim. He'd go to Achia, who was appointed over the libations. V'noten lo chotam u'mekabel mimenu nasachim. So he'd given him the receipt, and he received from him the libations. So if you like, you go to the cash desk, you pay your cash, you get a receipt. You then go to the libations desk, you hand over your receipt, and you get the libations. And that means there's one person dealing with cash, and there's another person dealing with materials and handing out the materials. How do they reconcile? How do they square up? Well, now we're seeing real kind of almost double entry accounting in the days of the temple. And we've learned already that accounting, everything in the temple has to be seen to be correct. So there is accounting, and there's high quality accounting. So we're going to learn in the Mishnah, Vela Erev, in the evening, Ba'im Zeh Etzel Zeh. In the evening, they meet up. This is Yochanan and Achia. Va'achia motzi et hachotamot. Achia brings out all the receipts that he's produced. Umakabel kenegdan ma'ot. So Achia, he's in charge of the libations. He'd bring out all the receipts he's received, and he'd get money for their value from Yochanan, who's the treasurer. So Yochanan and Achia, they square up at the end of every day. Im hotiru lehekdesh. If there was a surplus, the surplus belonged to the sanctuary. Im pachtu hayam shalem Yochanan mi beito. If there was less, Yochanan would have to pay out of his own pocket. Sheyad hekdesh al ha'elyona. As we learned, the temple always has the upper hand. If there's a dispute, the temple always wins out. What if someone lost his receipt? What if someone loses his receipt? So they wait until the evening. They wait until the reconciliation. If they found the value of the receipt, i.e., when they do the reconciliation, there's value left over. So the value of what he lost, not nimlo, they give him the libations. If not, he doesn't get his libations. Presumably he has to go back and buy and re-buy them. B'shem hayom katuv alehen. And by the way, the name of the day, i.e. the date or the day, was written on the receipt. B'shem hayom katuv alehen. The name of the day was written on the receipts. Mipnei haramaim, because of fraudsters. It seems, just as now, we need to take care with receipts which are handed out at fairgrounds to make sure no one is recycling receipts. Seems that then as well, they need to take care. So they would write the name, they'd write the day. Each day they were handing out receipts. So there was no possibility of getting a receipt on a Monday, perhaps exchange it for libations on a Tuesday, but then somehow maybe representing it on a Wednesday a second time.